My name is Stephen Gwynn. I'm with STAR, Safety Training Appropriate Response for Kids. A little about me, my background, is probably important because it'll help anybody that wants to use one of our kits have a better understanding and a communication line with myself and our staff. I started really early, at the age of 13, joining an Explorer post at the Red Cross in Topeka, Kansas. This is probably vintage 1968, and the following year there was an article in the paper in Topeka, Kansas, and they were calling for 14-year-olds that were 140 pounds and were at least 5'8" to volunteer in the emergency room. And I ended up doing that also with the Explorer Post. The Explorer Post attained national status. We as high schoolers got called out of school all the time for local, national, and regional emergencies. At the time, our kids had more training than the local ambulance service. So for big city disasters, our Explorer posts got the critical patients, whereas the ambulance service did not. My career grew and grew. On my 18th birthday, I became a nationally registered EMT. I also was hired by Stormont Vail in Topeka, Kansas as a respiratory therapist. And I worked there for a year or so and was recruited to a cardiac cath lab where we became nationally renowned for being so fast on our cardiac cath procedures, St. Francis in Topeka, Kansas. I then went, my dream was to be on an ambulance, and so I started working for a county ambulance service called Douglas County Ambulance, and on weekends, especially Sundays, one crew on, we'd sit and smoke our pipes and watch traffic go by, and this is vintage 75. In 1976, I got accepted into the University of Kansas Mobile Intensive Care Technology program. I started right away as director of training for a big ambulance service back in Topeka, Kansas. I did training from pediatric children all the way up through adults, and we even had a program called the Trauma Teddy program, where our children that we picked up would get a teddy bear, and it was through, I believe, Southwestern Bell. Great PR, and the teddy bears were just great for our little old ladies too. They could hug something that was soft. From there, started my own non-emergency transport service, and we were actually involved with that first wave of AIDS patients, and we would transport people home all the time from the hospital for their final hours. We also transported folks by stretcher from St. Luke's in Kansas City all the way to Pensacola, Florida, or College Station, Texas, or Rochester, Minnesota, or transporting out of University of Kansas patients going home to like Larned, Kansas, Western Kansas. After that, I took a real 18-month respiratory therapy program in 3 months. And while I was doing clinicals, I got recruited to be the first paramedic for Life Flight in Kansas City. And that's where I really got lots of experience with children. 80% of our flights were children. So it was me, I was a paramedic respiratory therapist, a flight nurse, and a pilot. And a big part of my responsibilities is I became a master instructor in pediatric advanced life support, and I trained all the doctors, all the nurses, all the respiratory therapists in pediatric resuscitation, and I did this in a 100-mile radius of Lawrence, Kansas. So with STAR, I've actually been thinking about this for the last 3 or 4 years, and thinking, how could I really impact the lives of children and their parents in the realm of first aid and emergency care. What came to fruition through my decision making and consulting with about 10 others, I decided to start emphasizing the treatment of burns. Burns are a really serious injury. Burns, we have no idea when we have a splash from coffee or get knocked into a burner, how long the exposure has to be in order to be a major burn. And that's why I started following a product called Water Gel about 22 years ago. And Water Gel has been in the United States now for probably 35 years. It's been in Europe for 45. It is now being utilized by all the military branches in the United States for those emergency burn scenarios with exploding munitions or plane crashes and things like that. And now we're starting to see this wonderful tool being available here on the West Coast. We've had it in the Midwest for the last 24 years. But out here in the Midwest, it's now being taught at several of the major medical centers in the San Francisco Bay Area for treatment of burns for children. And so the first STAR kit we're going to take a look at is called the small child. And small child is defined as from age 0, newborn, to age 5. Okay?